Welcome to Storytimer at Large. Serial killer Eugene William Gall Jr. On Thursday, October 20th, 1977, Beth Ann Mote, 14 years old, headed off to middle school at 7:15 a.m. Her Dayton, Ohio neighborhood was a quiet one. Her walk to school shouldn't have taken long at all. It was a chilly morning, and so she was wearing a couple of sweaters. Beth's mother was an Episcopal priest. She was one of only a handful of female priests in the country at that time. The Moat family lived a quiet life. Somewhere along Beth's route to school, she vanished. Like most schools in those days, if children did not show up, they were marked absent. But no calls home were ever made. If a child did not show up, it was just assumed that they were ill. Consequently, Beth's mother had no idea that she never made it to school that morning. Beth's abductor had an 8-hour lead on anyone who might have begun searching for her. That weekend, 2 of Beth's sweaters were found in the Five Oaks neighborhood of northeast Dayton. One had a hole and blood across the front. Her books were found a few streets away. Her purse was also found in another nearby area. All were roughly in the same neighborhood. The fact that these items were placed in an area where they would be discovered is significant. The abductor could have easily placed these items in a trash bag and disposed of them in a dumpster behind a restaurant or a store, and they would have never been seen again. But the killer put these things out where they would be discovered. This killer liked the fear and the horror that their discovery created, and he also liked the attention that the papers would give to this story, I think. Beth had been missing for a few days when her mother got a call. A man demanded money for the return of Beth. It would turn out to be just a cruel extortion plot. Henry Trussell would be arrested and questioned, but ultimately did not have Beth. He didn't have anything to do with the disappearance, but simply wanted to try to get money out of Beth's distraught family. However, the spot where he asked the family to drop the ransom money was very close to the 3 spots where her belongings had been found. Beth Ann was found on Thursday, October 27, 1977, by hunters. Mr. Glendon Miller and his friend were hunting groundhogs and walking on opposite sides of a field when Miller spotted what he first thought was some sort of Halloween decoration or mannequin. He took a little closer look and realized what he was actually seeing. He later described a large gash on the chest to reporters. Beth's case was still open and still being investigated when, on the morning of April 5th, 1978, in the following year, another young girl went missing. 13-year-old Lisa Jansen of Cincinnati was abducted while on her way to school. She was found the next day in Kentucky. She had been raped and shot. Eugene William Gall Jr. was apprehended nearby by Kentucky State Police after an armed robbery and a shootout with police in Gardnersville, Kentucky. He killed a police officer during that shootout. His .357 Magnum would be linked through ballistics testing to the murder of Lisa Jansen. Tire tracks near Lisa's body also matched Gall's vehicle. Eugene William Gall Jr. had a long criminal history. Gall was born in 1946 in Texas. He grew up at Hillsboro, Ohio, where his father, a retired colonel, was a mail carrier for the U.S. Postal Service. Gall was a lackluster student in high school. He spent some time in the Army in North Carolina and Virginia. His parents visited him in North Carolina around Thanksgiving in 1963. However, the following year, things were not going as well in the Army. On July 6th, 1964, he was arrested as a peeping Tom. I'm assuming that he was at Fort Bragg in Fayetteville, North Carolina, but that's only an assumption. Gall was stalking women and peering in their windows. That tended to get dismissed and waved away at the time, but he must have been doing more than just stalking and peeping in windows, because Gall was sent to spend some time in a Portsmouth military hospital in Virginia after his arrest and trouble with the law there. It makes one think he was doing something more serious than just peeping. He's sent back to Ohio in the latter half of 1964, I think discharged from the Army, or, I'm not sure the exact circumstances of that, but he is back in Ohio in the latter half of 1964, I believe. I suspect him in the murder of Jessica Minter in June of 1964. I think he was home on leave then. I also think that the thrill of that killing led to his increased activity of stalking women and girls when back on the East Coast in the Army in July. And I think that led to his arrest on July 6, 1964. Here's why I suspect him of the murder of Jessica Minter. Jessica Minter was home alone, and she opened the door even though she was in her nightgown. And no one in the neighborhood noticed anyone approaching her house. There was a lot of activity in the neighborhood. There were kids playing outside. There was a young man mowing the Minter family lawn. And no one really noticed anyone standing out that would have been suspicious. And I think that Eugene William Gall Jr. was wearing one of his father's spare postal carrier uniforms. I think he was dressed up like the mailman. And I bet he said, "I have a package for you to sign for." And Jessica Minter did what a good young girl would do in that time. She opened the door so she could sign for that package, so she wouldn't let her parents down. And Eugene William Gall stepped inside the house and began stabbing her to death. I also suspect him in the November 1964 murder of Evelyn and Dennis Kobe. Dennis Kobe was an orderly at the VA hospital in the psychiatric ward. And I think that Eugene William Gall Jr. and Dennis Kobe had some sort of interaction. Dennis Kobe lived near the VA hospital in Cincinnati as well. And I believe that Eugene William Gall Jr. followed him home and saw his happy home life with his wife. And that day in November of 1964 was the day before Thanksgiving. And keep in mind, Eugene William Gall Jr. has just disappointed his family. He's been shamed by his a forced exit from the military. His father was an Army colonel in the past. And I believe that he saw Dennis Kobe as having all of the things that he wanted to have, a wife, a child. Dennis and Evelyn were in the garage of their home dealing with a tricycle that was to be a Christmas present for their son. And I think they were going to bring it in the house and hide it. I think Eugene William Gall Jr. Saw them in this after he had followed Dennis Kobe home and murdered them with a .38 caliber weapon at that time. I think he also murdered Dennis Madden in December of 1964 in a botched armed robbery attempt. That was also done with a .38 caliber weapon. And I would imagine if those bullets are still around, if those slugs are still around, comparison of the slugs in the Evelyn and Dennis Kobe murders and comparison to the Dennis Madden armed robbery gas station murder, I think those slugs would match. I also think that Beverly Jarosz was killed by Eugene William Gall in December of 1964 as well. Her murder is incredibly similar to Jessica Minter's June 1964 murder. I think she also answered the door when she was said by her mother to be afraid to answer the door for the gas meter reader. In those days, the gas meter was inside the house, and she didn't want to let the gas meter reader in. But she did open the door for a stranger. And her mother was always puzzled as to who and why she would have opened the door for. And again, nobody in the neighborhood saw anyone suspicious. But I think Eugene William Gall was wearing his father's mail carrier uniform again, looking like a U.S. Postal Service mail deliverer. And I think he got her to open the door that way. Am I just fixating on this one guy for all these crimes? Maybe, but I've done a lot of research, and the research leads me to believe these things. After Gall's time in the service, in 1964, he's back in Cincinnati. And there were, in addition to the other crimes I mentioned in 64, there's a series of rapes and murders in 1965 and 1966. Could he have been responsible for any of those? There's several murders of older women. They're middle-aged women. Alice Hoke-Hausler's 1966 rape and murder is just one of those. Sylvia Jones was another one. And I've, in my blog, written about several of them because they follow a pattern as well. In 1969, Eugene William Gall was a married man, and in July, his son was born. He worked at Armco Steel and managed the Mid-Tonia Apartments in Middletown, Ohio. I don't know if he worked those jobs simultaneously or at different dates, years. Managing an apartment complex would leave a person with a lot of free time, I would imagine. It would also allow a person to have excuses to pop out at odd hours for fake repairs or fake emergencies and be gone for hours. Middletown is between Cincinnati and Dayton. In 1970, Eugene William Gall Jr. faced a series of charges in connection to several rapes, abductions, and armed robberies in Lima, Ohio. Lima is just a little bit north of Middletown. It's near Dayton. He was arrested for those charges on December 15th, 1970. After his trial and conviction, he was to be sentenced from 10 to 30 years, but inexplicably, he was paroled on April 12, 1977, after serving less than 7 years. That left him free to abduct, rape, and murder Beth Ann Mote and Lisa Jansen. Lima, Dayton, Cincinnati, he got around a lot. He was driving around a lot. That's what led me to believe that he had something to do with the armed robbery of Dennis Madden. There were other armed robberies of gas station attendants at the time. And I'm thinking, he would have needed money in 1964. He's freshly dismissed from the Army. He loves to drive around and stalk women. And he's going to need gas money. So I'm thinking, what other crimes did he commit? Are there more victims out there in small towns or cities that we haven't just connected the dots yet? When he was arrested in 1978, he had been driving an elderly neighbor to Dayton twice a week to doctor's appointments. What days were those? Was one of those days the same day that he abducted Beth Ann Mote? I would imagine it probably was. I would imagine he dropped off that elderly neighbor at that doctor's appointment. It's a weekday. Doctor's office is open. Hospital is open for all sorts of testing. Was this a regular hospital or a VA hospital? Did he work for a driving service, or was this a casual arrangement? I imagine this was probably a casual arrangement. Had he done this at any other time in his life? I think he probably did. Nancy Theobald's 1977 murder could very well be the work of Gall. It could also be, her murder could also be the work of Ralph Richard Howell. Sorry, Ralph Richard Howell. He has recently, in 2022, been connected through DNA to the murder of Cheryl Thompson. And Cheryl Thompson was murdered in a very similar way to Nancy Theobald, and very close in time. Both were students at the University of Cincinnati, too. Um, so, Nancy Theobald's murder, I tend to lean toward Ralph Richard Hughes. Um, but Marion Wells of Cincinnati is one of those 1965-66 rapes and murders. Arletta Sue Rimley in 1970, I believe. She was from Connorsville, Indiana. She was abducted off the street, raped and murdered. Jean Marie Melville was disappeared from a bus station in Richmond, Indiana. She was abducted, raped, and murdered and left in Darke County, Ohio. I think these are victims of Gall from 1970 and before he was jailed for his other Lima, Ohio crimes. There's also the 1969 murder, stabbing in a doorway, of Jennifer Judy in Cincinnati. I think Jennifer Judy was murdered by Eugene William Gall. She was walking home in the evening. She was assaulted and stabbed to death in the doorway of a building. Those, they seem to have the hallmarks of Eugene William Gall's murder. His, one of the things he said in an interview was that he'll be driving along and he'll just see a girl and boom, that's it. He's got to have her. He's got to go do this. And just throwing all this out there, in 1956, when Eugene William Gall Jr. was 10 years old, I don't think he had anything to do with this, but I think this murder was something that he read about at 10 years old and fantasized about and never quite got over. And this is the murder of a lady named Audrey Pugh in Cincinnati. She lived in a upscale neighborhood, and she was stabbed to death in the doorway of her home in Cincinnati after she opened the door for someone. I think Gall was very influenced by reading about her murder as a 10-year-old. I think he never quite got over that. I think it became a fantasy obsession for him, and I think that's what led him to kill Jessica Minter and Beverly Jarosz in that same sort of way. Eugene William Gall Jr. is still incarcerated in Ohio. They have his DNA on file, I'm sure, and hopefully his fingerprints, his DNA can be linked to some of these long, cold cases. I think there should be quite a bit of evidence in Jessica Minter's case, and especially in Beverly Jarosz's case. He forced her to go upstairs to her bedroom. He raped her on her bed. In stabbing her, his hand hit the slanted ceiling above her bed and left plaster damaged and all over. I think that his DNA could be on that plaster, on those plaster chunks. Hopefully they saved every bit of that. Hopefully they saved every bit of evidence in those cases. So that's the serial killer Eugene William Gall. I think you may see more about his you may see more about him in the news coming up in the years to come. Because I don't think he just murdered the two girls in 1977 and 78. I think that was just the end of his life of crime. Um, Thank you for listening to this post today. I hope that you'll hit the thumbs up button. Think of it as a thumbs up for justice. I'm always hoping for justice in these cases. I love seeing when long, cold cases get solved through DNA. And if you want to see more videos about Midwest true crime, cold cases, and the Midwest serial killers, consider hitting that bell icon on the right and subscribe. Consider sharing these videos. I cover a lot of cold cases, and every time the videos get shared, there's more of a chance that information will get out there in front of the right person and maybe trigger a memory, maybe trigger some tips to come in, and maybe help solve some of these long, cold cases. Thank you for listening.